The senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to echo and augment the remarks from the gentleman from Missouri and to call on President Biden and Democrats in Congress to work with Republicans on a bipartisan infrastructure bill. As the only senator in the unique position of sitting on all three committees with jurisdiction over transportation, I have a particular interest in making sure we are adequately funding our roads and bridges. I've had many conversations with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle since I joined the Senate, and everyone agrees that we have real infrastructure and transportation needs that must be addressed. The American Society of Civil Engineers recently gave our roads a D- rating, noting our $786 billion backlog on roads and bridges capital needs. They gave our bridges a C- rating and a repair tag of $125 billion. We also need to take another look at how we fund our highway system. Right now, we have a highway trust fund that we can't actually trust. Since 2008, we've been relying on general fund transfers to pay for our roads and bridges instead of fixing our user fee model to keep the trust fund solvent. User fees give users the benefit of seeing where their money is going and allows those people deriving the most benefit from the system to give the most in support. This is a very fair American way of doing things, and the certainty we get from a functioning user fee model is important for rural states like my home state of Wyoming. While much divides Congress these days, infrastructure, as that term is understood by most Americans, is a bipartisan issue. As such, one would assume that President Biden would want to find some common ground in order to build relationships in Congress and address the needs of every citizen. So it's perplexing that President Biden, who campaigned on bringing our nation together, is now pushing a blatantly partisan infrastructure bill. Let me show you why partisanship is unnecessary in the infrastructure space. I recently helped my Democratic colleagues on the Environment and Public Works Committee pass a bipartisan drinking water and wastewater infrastructure bill out of committee with unanimous support. This is clear evidence that Democrats and Republicans can come together on infrastructure issues and find common ground. In 2019, the EPW committee, under the leadership of my fellow senator from Wyoming, John Barrasso, unanimously passed a bipartisan 5-year highway funding bill. This would be a great place to start for any infrastructure bill in Congress. But this barely scratches the surface of bipartisan infrastructure legislation. Honestly, I'm hard-pressed to remember a time when infrastructure was not bipartisan. The American Water Infrastructure Act of 2018, bipartisan. The Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act of 2016, bipartisan. The Highway Transportation Funding Act of 2015, bipartisan. The Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act of 2015, bipartisan. The Water Resources Development Act of 2014, bipartisan. This isn't even a full decade of congressional action, and all of these things happened in partisan environments when Americans were divided on a host of issues. But despite our divisions, we've always come together to address American infrastructure. In 2021, this should be no different. If President Biden wants to truly unite the nation, he can start by working with Republicans on the most basic bipartisan issues. And he might be surprised which members of Congress are there to join him. I'll use myself as an example. I've opposed many of President Biden's actions to date, but I support his decision to bring our troops home from Afghanistan, and I am doing so publicly. I have also supported several of President Biden's nominees, including Secretary Buttigieg. I can promise President Biden that if he comes in good faith to work with Republicans and Democrats on a bipartisan infrastructure bill, I will be there to work with him every step of the way. I know my colleagues feel the same. All we're asking is for the unity president to come to the table. Thank you, Madam President. I yield back.
Madam President.